Welcome to Watkins Glen. Okay. Normal disclaimer, I'm offering our best advice here, but you have to figure out what works for you. So first things first, make sure you print out several track maps for your notes. I've already emphasized how important they are for reference points and other things. So make sure you've printed out 3, 4, half a dozen, for your notes. Passing zones at Watkins Glen. This is in the track pack, but let me emphasize that most passing zones at Watkins Glen, especially the long ones, are right side only passing zones. So the front straight between turns 1 and 2, the back straight, and the sole of the boot, those passing zones are all right side only. And that applies in all groups, not just lower groups. Even in expanded passing, we pass only on the right side. There's no passing in the S's in any groups. And the only other section where there's no passing in lower groups is between turns 10 and 11. The upper groups, black and red, can pass there in expanded passing. Well, even then, it's a very short passing zone. So let's go around the track quickly and look at the passing zones. Between 1 and 2, this is an easy one to use even for beginners. So your instructor should help you, but easy to get 1 or even 2 cars by here. Just have to be aware if there's a car coming out of the pits, it makes it harder. No passing in the S's, the back straight, big long straightaway, passing on the right side. Not noted on this map, which should be, is an easy passing zone exiting the inner loop, the bus stop. Right after that, you can send a car around on the right side, and it's very easy to send 1 car around, and then neither line is really interrupted much. So it's a great passing spot, and I encourage everyone to use it. Now, the next 2 passing zones here are, where the line crosses the track. So we don't have a mandatory side to pass on in this case. Coming down the hill between turns 5 and 6, most student drivers and many of us, frankly, I recommend that you, pull to the right where you're going to want to be for turn 6 anyway, and send a car around on the left. Most drivers and most students find that easier than sending a car around on the left. If the car is literally right behind you exiting 5, you can send them around on the right side, but otherwise it's easier to send them on the left. And it's the reverse between turns 6 and 7. Easier for most drivers to exit turn 6, go track left, give the pass on the right. And if you do that, then you, the person giving the pass, is online for turn 7, and similarly for turn 6. Already mentioned the sole of the boot, passing on the right. Between 8 and 9 is another place where the line crosses. So again, it's generally easier for students to track out and immediately go track right and then give a pass on the left side. But you can give a pass on either side that you wish in this passing zone. In student groups, I strongly encourage you, and your instructor will, to use these crossing passing zones. They're not real long, but it's easy enough to send 1 or even 2 cars around once you get the hang of it. And if you don't do that, then we tend to get trains building up, and that's not fun for anyone. And then after turn 9, the off-camber between turns 9 and 10, passing on the left, again, an easy passing zone to send at least 1 car by. No passing except in red and black between 10 and 11, and the front straight, as I said before, right side only. So those are passing zones. Here's Watkins Glen from the air. Here's the turn numbers, just nice and big so you can see them, but they're on the other map as well. So turn 1, let's talk about the track. Turn 1's 90-degree corner. It tends to go downhill a little bit, heavily banked. So that makes it faster than it otherwise would be. But this corner is approached at high speed. However, exiting this corner is the longest, straight section on the track, basically, because most cars are going to be on either on the floor or mainly on the floor, exiting turn one all the way to the bus stop, a long, long ways. So we need to exit turn one properly. It's very easy to screw it up by coming into it too fast. And one of the reasons is that the braking zone that you see here is downhill. You can see that easily in the picture. And sometimes it gets slippery. It's not normally too bad. It's not too bumpy. It used to be more bumpy, but it's downhill. And we're coming in at great speed. And so it's very easy to brake too late or not hard enough and enter turn one too fast. And if we do that, we're not going to be able to execute the corner properly and get on the gas as soon as we could and should. So you see the turn in here, point, roughly, shortly before the flag station. There are lots of tire marks here that you can use for references if you don't want to use the cone. And of course, you can see the apex curve. Now, this is an apex, like many on Watkins Glen, that we can drive along for 10 or 20 feet. Notice the curb. Here we have a curb, a lower curb, and an upper curb. And we want to use the lower curb, but definitely not the upper one. So we want to put the right wheel 10, 15 feet along this lower curb and use that to help us, widen the radius. Track out, lots of room. By the way, if you drive over that curb, you're off the track as far as our rules are concerned, and that'll count as a spin. So, I recommend you don't use the curb except in case you need it for margin, in other words. But it is technically part of the track surface. This is a passing zone that you see in front of us between turns 1 and 2. Coming up are the S's, turns 2, 3, 4. Here you see what they look like from the air, but this doesn't really capture the elevation change, especially in turn 2. So here's turn 2. The apex is at the bottom we're going downhill between 1 and 2. The lowest point is at the apex of turn 2. And what we're going to do is track out on turn 2 on the right side. We're not going to go track left. So you see the turn in here, and we turn in toward the curbing. Here is that curbing. This is the same curb. You see the beginning of it here. In this photo, we've now gone up the hill, and we're at the end of that curbing, which is more or less the same place you see the end of the Armco. I should note here, notice the orange on the Armco. That indicates an opening. So if you need to pull off for a mechanical any reason, you can pull off safely in this area and even back into an opening in the track here, or the track workers can pull you into there, and it's a safe place to pull off. But for our purposes here, this is the turn-in point. We're going to turn in for turn 3 basically at the end of this, red and orange curbing. Now, one thing I want you to notice carefully here, the road is cambered, meaning, or crowned, if you want to call it that, meaning the center of the road, kind of where you see the seam, is the high point. And so this side is lower and this side is lower. So guess what? At this point, we're going to turn and go across, that high point, which means when we initially turn, we have favorable camber, favorable banking. But as we go across the high point, we have unfavorable camber. So the car may feel a bit nervous as we go across. For that reason, we always want to be on a reasonable amount of throttle at this point, a reasonable amount of gas, not necessarily on the floor, but on a reasonable amount of gas. If you feel the need to slow down before you get to this point, do it coming up the hill, and make sure that you're back on a reasonable amount of gas so that you help keep the car planted as it gets nervous going across this high point in the road. Here you see turn 3 from the air, and the diagram highlights the long apex that we want to run along the curbing on the left here. Here's kind of what it looks like as we're going across that high point. And here is that long apex curb on the left. These curbs are not very friendly, so do not recommend that you drive on them, but we do need to get close to them. So if you occasionally brush one, that's okay, but not friendly to drive on. Here, we're still running along that curbing on the left, but now we can start to see that the track's bending right for turn 4 in front of us. The track opens up, turn 4, 3 is faster than 2, 4 is faster than 3. And the apex is well along on turn 4. And kind of, before the flags, there's a flag station that can be seen, as we start to enter turn 4, that we should always pick up is very important on the right here. And in the apex for turn 4 is slightly before that flag station. Here you get a better view of the flag station and the main back straight, which, like the rest of the S's, is crowned. So as you go across to track left here, you're going to notice that, and you're going to notice again when we get up to the bus stop. So here's the inner loop or the bus stop, basically a quick right, left, left, right complex that is quicker than most people think. Here's another view of it. Another view, including the following turn. So braking zone. Now, unlike turn 1 that was downhill, this braking zone is actually uphill. May not look like it at first, but it's actually uphill a reasonable amount. So the car will slow down reasonably well, but this is the fastest section of the track. And so we're carrying good speed into this brake zone. So it's a hard brake. I don't care what you're driving to slow down, to the appropriate pace for the bus stop. The turn in for the bus stop is somewhere. You should use this fat white line that you see on the left here as a reference. You notice the cone is kind of in the middle of that fat white line. I've personally found that the beginning or near the beginning of that line is a reasonable turn in, but find one that works for you. But it's nice that that's there. It gives us a good reference for repeatability, even if the cone is in a different spot or gets hit. The first curb on the right, as you can see, many people drive over it. I don't recommend that. It's not the friendliest curb in the world, and it does beat the car up. And there's no, we're not out to set lap time records, so no need to drive on it. Maybe you can brush it. That's okay. The second curb up ahead, this one is definitely not friendly. And so again, maybe you want to brush it, but definitely don't want to drive on that guy. The third curb, the lower part, is a little more friendly, so not too bad to drive on that. Although again, I like to leave the curb for margin. I like to drive, to avoid the curbs. And then if I'm off a couple inches and I grab a couple inches of curb, it's not a big deal. If you routinely try to use a lot of curb and then you make a small mistake, you may find that translates into a much bigger mistake. And you would not be the first one to have that happen to. So you've been warned. I should have said the fourth curb here is reasonably friendly. So that one, if there's one you want to drive over, that would be the one to drive over. As we exit turn 5, we're entering, exit the bus stop, we're entering turn 5, also called the Carousel for reasons you can see. This is that passing zone that I mentioned. As you exit the bus stop, you should be mid-track, not track left, should be mid-track. There's still room to give a pass on the right in this little short section here as we head into turn 5. Here's what it looks like from mid-track as just after we've exited the bus stop. Now, what we want to be doing at this point is getting our eyes all the way around to the right. There's a flag station around to the right that's not quite visible from this point, but it will be very quickly. But we want to be turning our head and looking down the hill for that flag station, just as soon as we've exited the bus stop. And again, this is just a little bit further around. Now notice that the car is headed toward the inside part of turn 5, not using the outside half of the asphalt here. The reason is banking. The inside half of the carousel is banked much more than the outer half. And so we only use the inside half. And so we tend to run pretty close to the curb, quite some distance here. Now you can see the flag station. We can see it sooner than this view. Maybe not quite here, but getting close. But our eyes still want to be down there. Now we can easily see it. And conveniently, the apex is right at the flag station. So how easy is that? This is another apex we want to run along for some distance. So we don't want to be in a hurry to leave the curbing as the apex here. So here it is as you get closer. But run right along this apex curbing for some way, and then we can exit the corner. Now, turn 6, also called the laces or this whole section, is a downhill left-hander, and it's very blind, meaning we can't see a lot of the corner for a long, long time as we get into it. So, I mean, you can see on the overhead how sharp the corner is. It's still pretty fast because it's big and sweeping, but the fact that it's downhill makes it feel uncomfortable to many people, because the car can feel a little bit nervous, not necessarily nervous, but unusual, not like we're necessarily used to. So as we come down the hill, and your instructor will work with you on this, but you're going to pick a point, some point between where this grate is on the right and a little bit further down, where we're going to bend the car in. And we're going to be on the brakes at this point, to slow the car as well. But the reason we want to bend the car in is if we were to stay all the way track right, all the way to kind of where you see this turn-in cone, notice, there's not much room left in front of us for braking or anything else. Whereas if we bend the car in, like in the photo, we have acres, it seems, of asphalt in front of us. So if we bend the car in and kind of brake on a straight line or almost straight line as we bend the car in, then we give ourselves lots of safety margin in this very fast and challenging corner. But you can tell from this photo that we can see almost nothing of the corner. I mean, yes, we can see it starting, but this is the very beginning. So we want our head bent left looking, but right now we can't see very much. As we get further around, we can start to see the flag station on the other side of the track, out near, on the other side, outside, I should say, of turn 6. But we're not even to the apex here yet, and we still can't see it. Once we do finally get there, we really do want to get in tight on this curb. In fact, we want to brush it every once in a while. Again, it's an unfriendly curb, so we don't really want to drive on it. But we do want to brush it because we need to be tight in here because of the way the banking is set up in turn 6. The bank, there's a nice tight or steep section of banking near the apex, and if we run along this apex curb and tight to it, we get to take advantage of all of that. If we run wide or don't do that, we're going to miss a lot of that, and it's going to slow us down and not be as safe. So we want to run along this apex, take advantage of that curbing. The toe or turn 7 comes up next. It's also, I mean, look at it, it's 180 degrees, right? But we're going downhill coming into it, all the way from turn 5 to the entry to turn 7 is downhill. But now we're going to go back uphill, and we go uphill pretty steeply. So that changes the character of this corner completely. So here you can see that the entrance is downhill, and you can see right where the track bottoms out because there's a black spot right there. I also want you to notice the white line on the left here. Notice how it jogs left. We're going to follow the straight white line straight in. We're not going to jog left. There's no percentage that I know of in following that white line to the left. So we're just going to drive straight into the corner, and let me back up. And we're just going to let the hill dictate kind of how we drive this, because as obviously we're going to brake coming into this corner because we're going pretty fast coming in. We have to brake some, but it's enough to get we have to brake enough to get the car to turn. The minute the car begins to turn, guess what? The hill will slow the car down a lot and help the car turn more and help us get ready to get on the gas. Unfortunately, in most cars, we have to slow down more than we otherwise might like to get the car to turn in the first place, because it is entirely possible to come in too fast and go straight off this corner, and the results are not pretty. So I don't recommend that. So we do have to slow down, get the car turned. But once we get the car turned, now we can begin to feed on a lot of gas. And depends on how much power your car has and so on. But this hill will absorb a lot of power. And this is another apex we want to run along for a short distance, 10, 15 feet. Notice on track out here, there's asphalt outside the white line. I see a lot of cars not using all of the track here. If you aren't using all of that, then you should. You paid for it. Let's use it. The heel, turn 8, is another sharp corner. You can see on the overhead here, what is 110 degrees. And this corner, unlike the others, is relatively flat. There's no hill really doing much here. There is banking and so on. So this is kind of a classic trail brake corner. We can carry some speed in, but we can't get on the gas very early here. So we can trail brake in, and by all means on this corner and the ones coming up, we need patience, even on the previous ones. But we need patience here because the apex is a long, long ways around, and we can't really commit to the gas pedal until we get to the apex. So we got to be patient. Same thing applies even more so to the off camber, which is the mirror image to the left of the previous corner. The difference is there's a hill here, and then the track flattens out. You can see where the corner reconnects with the straight section that the NASCAR guys use. And that's why it's called the off camber, because this section in here is flat. It's not really off camber. It's just flat. It just feels off camber. So as we approach the corner, there's a rise here. We can use the brakes into that rise and scrub speed. And we want to get up on that flat section up ahead here, maybe not quite to where the car in front is in this photo, but up, halfway between the cone and that car before we, start bending the car in. And we want to do that slowly or gradually, because this is a long corner, as you saw. And if we turn in too quickly, we're going to be way early on the apex. Another apex that we want to run along for some distance, and we want to be patient on, because here there is very little runoff at track out. All there is out there is Armco. So this corner deserves great respect. Turn 10, sometimes called the fast left. It's not as sharp as you can see. It's also heavily banked. So this is a quick corner, but one that deserves great respect as well. The turn in point is the 100 marker here, which is also where that yellow light is. And in my opinion, everybody should be tapping the brakes or more here, but you should, whatever braking you're going to do, you should do it, well before you think you should, but at only half the modulation. So in other words, we want to slow the car down, but we don't want to upset it. It's a fast corner. We want the car nicely balanced. So rather than, doing a hard hit on the brake pedal, we're going to do more like a brush or a little more than a brush, depending on how much speed you need to take off. And we're going to do it in a way not to upset the car. And we're not going to do much trail brake at all on this corner. We're going to get back on at least maintenance throttle right after we turn in for this corner. And as we approach the apex, many drivers find it useful to actually turn in a little bit more, toward the apex. And that's because of the banking that helps us as we get into the corner here. And that helps us stay tight on this apex curbing. A lot of asphalt at track out here, but again, if you go over the curb, you're off the track. If you miss drive the corner and you need that margin, then by all means drive off. But don't expect to use the curb and the asphalt out there as part of the track surface. This section between 10 and 11 that's in front of us here is not a passing zone in lower groups, only in black and red. Turn 11 is another fast corner. And again, we want to brake here gently so that we don't upset the car. Not as heavily banked as the previous turn, but still banked and still quick. So we want to do the same kind of thing, a gentle brake, don't upset the car, back on maintenance throttle, right after or shortly after we turn in, for the corner. If you have a really powerful car, you might be able to trail brake a little bit further in, but nonetheless, it's a corner where we want the car to be balanced so that we can get on the gas as soon as possible, because this does lead onto the front straight. So here you see another apex to run along for some distance. And there is a little bit of room at track out, but not a huge amount. But done properly, this is a great corner and a lot of fun to drive. So let me summarize. Watkins Glen is obviously a very challenging track. Treat it with respect. There are places where if you make a mistake, it's going to hurt. Hopefully just the car, not you, but there's respect. There are no slow corners at Watkins Glen. None. They're all quick. But there are a lot of long corners. And as I said before, patience is required. The elevation changes are much greater than you think. If you get the chance to walk the track, then you should. Most of the corners are banked, as I've said, and you really need your track notes. If you don't have them, then start writing them, after your first session. And of course, as always, have fun. So with that said, I hope you found some of this useful, and I appreciate any feedback you have for me at Watkins Glen or before. And again, I look forward to seeing you at Watkins Glen and to everyone having a great time.